2025-2026 financial year, representing 25.1% of the country's gross domestic product, rather.
And of course, in an attempt to address persistent spending pressures in sectors such as health, education, transport and security, the government initially proposed a phased increase in the value-added tax rate from 15% to 16% over 2 financial years. Now, this measure was expected to generate an additional 28 billion rand in revenue in the 2025-26 financial year. Now, let's take a look at what the minister had to say on the day that he presented the budget speech about the delay on the 12th of March 2025. Stay tuned.
But what is positive is that the delay has stimulated an unprecedented level of public debate about the difficult policy trade-offs we as a nation face. A vital debate about which policies to fund and how to fund them, about which priorities to pursue now and which ones we may need to delay in the context of unlimited resources. As much of the debate has been dominated by the proposed increase to value-added tax, the bigger debate must be about how we grow the economy for the benefit of all South Africans. A growing economy and the larger fiscal resources that comes with it would give us more fiscal room to meet more of our developmental goals. But the truth is that our economy has stagnated for over a decade. In that time, GDP growth has averaged less than 2%, far below the level required to meet our expanding list of needs. In 2024, the economy grew by only 0.6%. Over the medium term, GDP growth is projected to average 1.8%. To meet our goals of redistribution, redress, and structural transformation, the economy needs to grow much faster and in an inclusive manner. This is the central objective of the current administration.
And welcome back. And you're still watching the live broadcast of Parliament TV, and we're coming to you live from our parliamentary studios in the parliamentary precinct, and the live update up to the 2025 budget speech 3.0. And that was the Minister of Finance who just spoke now, the Inogwana, on the 12th of March 2025. It is outlining the importance of the debate around the first proposed VAT hike and government's needs to increase economic growth and the country's fiscal resources. In his speech, the minister emphasized that government's strategy to achieve faster growth remained anchored on the following 4 pillars: maintaining macroeconomic stability, implementing structural reforms, improving state capacity, and accelerating infrastructure investment.
Correct. So now let's take a look at what the minister had to say about the tax proposal during his speech on the 12th of March 2025.
Madam Speaker, there are several persistent pending pressures, spending pressures in health, education, transport, and security. These have to do with the government properly fulfilling its service delivery mandate. After careful consideration, the government has decided to fund these. Deferring the funding of these sectors further would compromise the government's ability to meet its constitutional obligation to those people. To raise the revenue needed, the government proposes to increase the VAT rate by 0.5 percentage point in 25-26 and by another 0.5 percentage point in the following year. This will bring the VAT rate to 16% by 26-27. Let me pause for a moment. Let me pause for a moment and say,
order, honorable members. Let's allow the Minister to finish his presentation.
Madam Speaker, should the spending reviews and other measures we're embarking on yield enough extra revenue, we will reassess the need to embark on the second 0.5% point increase to VAT. Government also proposes no inflationary adjustment to personal income tax brackets and medical tax credits. These measures will raise 28 billion in additional revenue in 25-26 and 14.5 billion in 26-27. Madam Speaker, this decision was not taken lightly. I can tell you now, no Minister of Finance is ever happy to increase taxes. We are aware of the fact that a lower overall burden of tax can help to increase investment and job creation and also unlock household spending power. We, however, have had to balance this knowledge against the very real and pressing service delivery needs that are vital to our developmental goals, and we cannot be further postponed.
A lot of and sounds of disagreements during that delivery of the speech. You're still watching Parliament TV as we build up to the budget speech to be tabled by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, who's just been on your screen a few seconds ago before the National Assembly at the Cape Town International Convention Center today at 2 p.m. And if you have just joined us, we are going over the events that led to the third budget speech that is scheduled to take place today.
Now, of course, these events include the unprecedented postponement on the 19th of February, where a proposed VAT hike of 2% was an issue of contention. And then, of course, now on the 12th of March, which was Budget 2.0, a proposed VAT increase of 1% over the course of 2 financial years is what led to political parties seeking the intervention of the judiciary and the withdrawal of the budget speech that was tabled on the 12th of March.
And as we had just taken you back to the 12th of March 2025, when the Minister of Finance proposed a 1% VAT increase over the course of 2 financial years, let's take a look at the reasons that the Minister provided for opting for the VAT increase.
We, however, have had to balance this knowledge against the very real and pressing service delivery needs that are vital to our developmental goals, and we cannot be further postponed. Honourable members, we thoroughly examined alternative raising the VAT rate. We weighed the policy trade-offs involved in increasing the corporate and personal income taxes. Increasing the corporate and personal income taxes would generate less revenue while potentially harming investment, job creation, and economic growth. Corporate tax collections have declined over the last few years, an indication of falling profits and a trading environment worsened by the logistic constraint and rising electricity cost. Furthermore, South Africa's corporate income tax collections are already higher than most of our peer countries. On the other hand, an increase to the personal income tax rate would reduce taxpayers' incentive to work and save. Our top personal income tax rate and our personal income tax collection as a percentage of GDP are far higher than those of the most developing countries. Increasing it is therefore not feasible. Taking on additional debt to meet the spending pressures was also not feasible. The amount is simply too large. The cost of borrowing would be unaffordable. Our sub-investment credit rating would also make this level of borrowing costlier and put us at a risk of even further downgrowth. Madam Speaker, VAT is a tax that affects everyone. By opting for a marginal increase to VAT its distributional effect and impact were costly considered. The increase is also the most effective way to avoid further spending cuts and to enable us to extend the social wage.
And that was the Minister of Finance on the 12th of March 2025 during a National Assembly sitting, wherein he tabled the budget speech proposing a 1% VAT increase over the next 2 financial years. Of course, we know that that matter was taken to court by the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters, and there was an out-of-court settlement reached between the minister and the parties concerned, which was ratified by the court on the 27th of April. And the minister provided an explanation as to why government opted for the increase despite the cost of living pressures that households face.
Now let's bring it home. What role does Parliament play in this process? Now, as the legislative arm of the state, responsible for performing oversight, holding the executive to account, and facilitating public participation and involvement, Parliament's role in this process is of utmost importance. Now, at the heart of democracy, it doesn't just receive the budget proposals, it bears the responsibility to scrutinize, debate, and approve it. Now, this ensures financial accountability, responsible governance, monitoring of public funds, ensuring that departmental targets are met, and highlights are of importance of the national budget for economic growth, potential investments, job creation, efficient and effective public service.
And the Standing Committee on Finance Chairperson, Dr. Joe Maswangai, presented the committee's report on the fiscal framework and revenue proposals to the National Assembly. This was followed by an intense debate by members of various political parties presented in the House.
Now, of course, this was part of the parliamentary process, and the committee then reported that it had been briefed by the Minister of Finance and the Commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, and received presentations from the Financial and Fiscal Commission and the Parliamentary Budget Office. Now, the committee further received 51 submissions from ordinary members of the public on the 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals.
And I think viewers would have seen throughout the day on our parliamentary channel that there has been an invitation to members of the public to have their say as part of the public participation in terms of the budget. So please look out on what that advert is saying. It gives clear instructions on what you need to do in order to participate in this budget process, because it is open to the members of the public, and it's always better if members of the public go through the document that will be available today after the minister had tabled the budget on www.treasury.gov.za. Go read through those documents. You have enough time, sufficient time to make submissions to Parliament, and you might get invited to participate in those discussions. So in considering the 2025 fiscal framework and revenue proposals, the committees, which are the finance committees, reported that it had opted the report with recommendations. It had adopted, rather, the report with recommendations, including a call for the Minister of Finance to provide an explanation regarding what the government would do to mitigate the impact of the VAT increase.
Of course, this was met with opposing views and reservations from political parties such as the Democratic Alliance, which forms part of the Government of National Unity, the official opposition, the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, and the Economic Freedom Fighters, amongst others. Now, at the end of the debate, the report was put to a vote and passed, with 194 members voting in support and 182 voting against.
And those 182 members that voted against included some of the GNU, which is the Government of National Unity main partner, the Democratic Alliance, which voted against the budget on the 12th of March, if I'm correct, on the 2nd of April, rather. And obviously we had other political parties, including your Umkhonto weSizwe Party and the Democratic Alliance that are not, and the Economic Freedom Fighters that are rather not part of the Government of National Unity, also opposing that budget. Now, as we're getting ready for the minister's third attempt to table the 2025 budget speech, let's take a look at what your expectation of the budget speech are. Please stay tuned.
My name is Serofatso Musi, birth, bred in Kimberley, Northern Cape. I came early 2000 to Cape Town for education, and I stayed around Cape Town for a very long time. But most importantly, I was also raised within the location here in Langa with my aunt, my late aunt. And one thing about this community is that there is love amongst each other. As much as there's chaos, there's love. So I was birthed in Kimberley, and I'm in Cape Town, based in Cape Town right now. Our NPO is Sunray Foundation. We birthed it last year, late last year. I met up with two guys, Keketso Jabari and Tulani. I've always been into programs from a young age, from where I was. And also with the surroundings of and my aunt was much more into giving back to the community. So for me, when I met with them and they had this passion that they want to give back to the community because they've gone through life challenges themselves, growing in such a community whereby there is also gangsterism, substance abuse and all of that. And now looking at the situations around the communities at the moment at large and also within schools, we found the value to interject ourselves somewhere within that. And because of giving back was also my passion, I felt I've got a daughter. And as much as sometimes you look at your level of, I want to put my child in a private school, it does not guarantee that they will not go through the same challenges or through the life experiences that the guys have gone through. So when I met up with them, I felt, okay, we can do this. So we started the foundation late last year, registered everything, and we found that there is a space within this situation between the middleman between the community, the teachers, and the youth or the children within the school. So that's how we came about having this foundation. If I was a Minister of Finance, I would focus my budgets basically on social needs, youth development programs, and also grants for SMEs, for NPOs, because that's where the employment will grow from, and that's where the money will come from at some point. Because I understand that we are facing with challenges of poverty within our communities and the country at large. But if we are able to create jobs, we are able to, to make money, and with industry being built, because you find it. And either it ends up, it doesn't end well. So youth development programs, social needs, and also SMEs and NPOs.
Igama nguThulani wakwaSiqwani Fani. Umuntu okhulele apha kwaLanga, being born and raised kwaLanga, I've got a lot of challenges being a naughty child and also being out of line, like being, I would say, outlaw. But growing up, I never have opportunity to have someone who guides me and like being my mentor with everything. But after some few challenges that I've faced in life, then I've come up with an idea, why don't I give back to Mpakatini, because I've taken much in Mpakatini and realized that I'm a role model. There are also kids who are looking up to me, so I'd rather now trying to be the best or the good role model to them. We came with an idea, why don't we open up a program that will also assist abantwana with development yabo, growth yabo, bakwazi banabo. They will have something to do with life. And I think everyone has received us so well. Starting from Emosheshe, I think we have running 30 students now that have already signed up with us. And also, we've also already started work with the Isilimela Comprehensive High School. And I think we've already issued 40 forms we now also, there are also those students also wants also to join because they've already now been exposed. As a Minister of Finance, I think I would put my money on Sunray or a lot of programs similar to Sunrays that they can also be deported to other schools or deployed to other schools so that they can also work with teachers to ease the weight from the teachers. And it's great programs that also connecting the parents, even teachers and the kids, because we are looking for the better future for our kids. I think as a minister, I will put my money on there.
And those were ordinary South Africans personifying active citizenship and living up to your parliament, your voice, your future. Now you're still watching Parliament TV as we build up to the tabling of the budget speech by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, before the National Assembly sitting at the City ICC at 2 p.m. Now we've gone through a journey and we've highlighted some of the important events that led up to the third attempt at the budget speech. Now these events include the unprecedented postponement of the 19th of February, a proposed VAT increase of 1% over the course of 2 financial years on the 12th of March, which led to political parties seeking intervention from the judiciary, and the withdrawal of the budget speech tabled on the 12th of March, of course, after court proceedings.
And the Western Cape approach by the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters in the fight against the proposed VAT increase by the Minister of Finance. And while those proceedings were ongoing, the Minister of Finance, Mr. Godongwana, and the main respondents in the matter agreed to have the matter settled out of court, settling for withdrawal of the VAT hike proposal. And the Western High Court subsequently ratified the agreement on 27 April 2025, which marks Freedom Day in our country.
Now that sums up the events and reasons of why we are about to witness the third attempt to the tabling of the budget speech 2025. Now, of course, this is a reminder that the minister is scheduled to take the podium before the National Assembly at 2 p.m. at the Cape Town International Convention Centre.
And what is the budget speech that we are talking about, and what does it aim to do? Let me just give you a little lesson. The budget speech is a formal presentation by the Minister of Finance, where he outlines the government's proposed financial plans for the upcoming fiscal year and how Treasury will fund the key government service delivery priorities as announced in the President's State of the Nation address. The President delivered the State of the Nation address in February, outlining some of government's priorities for the year. So the address today, that address by the President set the tone for today's budget speech, where the Minister will outline how those priorities will be funded.
And it's important to note that the budget speech is not just one document. So today the Minister will table the fiscal framework, the Division of Revenue Bill, the Appropriations Bill, as well as other related budget information. The budget process doesn't end there. After the speech, Parliament will take over to ensure that every cent that is allocated is aligned with the national priorities, and Parliament will then exercise its oversight, as it does in several ways.
And the first, it will be to debate the fiscal framework, which is the plan for government spending and revenue collection. And then it will consider the Division of Revenue Bill, which determines how funds are shared across national, provincial, and local spheres of government. Finally, it will examine the Appropriations Bill, which allocates money to specific departments and government state-owned entities.
Now, also, I should remember that, for example, on the 2nd of April, there was a huge debate, a robust debate in the National Assembly, where the fiscal framework report was presented and it was voted upon. And because of the court case, of course, now, Parliament has to start that process all over, and that is why we have the third budget today. It is also important to remember that Parliament's oversight function continues throughout the financial year, not only in just the two houses, but in its committees as well, where the executive is expected to report quarterly on their targets and financial statements. Now, parliamentary committees monitor government spending, assess service delivery performance, and ensure that departments remain accountable for their use of public funds, your tax money.
And remember that this institution of Parliament is your institution. So it is very important that viewers and fellow South Africans take part in all the discussion, debate that take place in Parliament as part of this institution's public participation process. As such, you will see during the course of today, we would be playing an advertisement on this channel, inviting members of the public to make their submissions once the minister has tabled the bill today at 2 o'clock. And those documents will be available on the National Treasury website, www.treasury.gov.za. There are some closing dates, so please, the sooner, the better, which is why now we're taking you to the critical part of our democracy, which is the budget. It is the critical part of our democracy and seeks to ensure that it works for the people. So a reminder that you are still watching this build-up show, the 2025 budget speech that is scheduled to be delivered by the Minister of Finance, Mr. Godongwana, in the National Assembly, which is the Cape Town International Convention Center, today at 2 p.m. So please stay tuned to Parliament TV.
Processing of the budget is one of the most important oversight functions of Parliament. The budget reflects the choices that government has to make, and it is the tool it uses to achieve its economic and development goals. In the budget, government sets out what it's going to spend and the income collects, which it needs to finance its expenditure. The government has to balance a wide range of legitimate demands with limited resources at its disposal. Budget oversight is intended to help government move forward to realize its goals by increasing government's accountability to its citizens. The budget process occurs over a period of about 18 months. The budget of any financial year undergoes a 4-stage process. The stages are drafting, planning and formulation, the legislative process, implementation, as well as auditing and assessment. Parliament and government departments plan the budget for months in advance for the following year, implementing the current budget while continuously monitoring it for delivery and compliance with policy, and evaluating and auditing the previous year's budget. During the legislative phase of the budget, the National Assembly, the National Council of Provinces, and the provincial legislatures debate budget votes with the involvement of interest groups and civil society, the media, and the general public. This is to ensure that they reflect national priorities and accommodate outcomes and actions required by the mid-term strategic framework. It is important to measure the effectiveness of public spending and the manner in which public resources are spent. The more immediate goals are to ensure that government budget priorities are consistent with the declared policy objectives and that the financial resources allocated to priority areas are spent fully and properly. However, a larger purpose of the budget process is to contribute to democracy through ensuring openness, transparency, and accountability for public resources. In terms of the Constitution, government is accountable to Parliament. Parliament, as the representative of the people, monitors and seeks to influence government policy and action through the budget. The budget is the instrument for translating policies and plans into public goods and services. Any policy or plan without a budget attached to it is unlikely to be successfully implemented. Economic success depends on the ability of government to employ limited resources with maximum effect. The role of Parliament in this regard cannot be overstated. Parliament's duty is to detect and prevent abuse, prevent illegal and unconstitutional budgetary conduct, conduct on the part of the government, make government budgetary operations more transparent, and hold the government answerable on how taxpayers' money is spent. Parliament exercises its oversight through various portfolio committees that assess the budget and other plans, as well as the performance of each department, including their financial performance, and hold them accountable. The budget process is crucial to good governance because it ensures that government expenditure remains aligned to South Africa's policy goals and objectives. What is also of great importance is that ongoing monitoring and tracking of the executive by Parliament allows for intervention in the event of wrongful expenditure and failures in service delivery. The process holds government departments accountable for their expenditure and gives Parliament and the citizens it represents an opportunity to make their own demands and interventions.
You are still watching Parliament TV, your window to democracy. And we are just a few minutes before we cross over to the chamber where the Minister of Finance will table the 2025 budget speech before the National Assembly at the City ICC. And of course, right behind us, those are some of the robust and members, of course, are waiting for the Minister to
this budget process under the 7th administration, Parliament, and first under the Government of National Unity since the national and regional elections in May. So you can be part of this conversation on all social media platforms at Parliament of RSA and let us know what your expectations are. And as Tsepo has said, if you can see behind us at the Cape Town International Convention Center, which has been declared the National Assembly, members are getting ready to listen to Budget 3.0, scheduled to take place in the next few minutes.
Of course, this is because the National Assembly was in 2022, and of course the National Assembly and Parliament as a whole has had to mitigate and ensure that democracy does carry on despite the challenges. Of course, there is a rebuild right here on the precinct, and we will see the reveal of that in the coming years. Waiting in anticipation, as you can see, this is Budget 3.0 after so much controversy from the 19th of February when it was supposed to be tabled. The public market was set aside, and now today, 1st of May 2025.
Now it goes over to the chamber.
Of our political parties who are here, joining us from the gallery, who are now the guests of Parliament. I also want to acknowledge all members of Parliament who are here present, and thank you for having accepted that we use this venue as we deliver the budget today. We've also indicated that for all the major sittings, such as the adoption of all other instruments, we will use the venue where all members will be present instead of being hybrid. The Secretary will read the order of the day.
appropriation bill, introduction, appropriation bill, and tabling of division of revenue bill.
Thank you, Minister of Finance.
Honorable Speaker, Togodidiza, Deputy Speaker, Anele Lotriet, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Refule Munsweni Tsipane, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, less governed. His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, who, as we speak, is joining us from Washington. We heard there's no shame about it.
Order, honorable members. Order, honorable minister, you can proceed with your speech.
One of the choices we had in discussing with the president was whether we could postpone the budget or we could postpone the trip. We decided that we could not postpone any of the two. And as you can see in terms of the program of Parliament, the NCOP will be deliberating on the appropriation bill and exactly on the deadline on the 30th of April, of July. We simply can't extend the budget beyond the 30th of July because departments after the 30th of July will only be accessible to 10% of their budgets. And none of the departments have got a 10% wage bill which is less than 10%. There are serious implications for that. It may mean that we may have to close government. Honorable Deputy President Paul Mashatile, who is also not with us, for long commitments he undertook before this day was agreed upon. Cabinet colleagues, members of the Executive Council for Finance, Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Commissioner of the South African Revenue Services, fellow South Africans. Allow me to table the following documents before this House. The 2025 Division of Revenue Bill, the 2025 Appropriation Bill, the 2025 Estimates of National Expenditure, the revised information on the 2025 Estimate of National Expenditure, the 2025 Budget Review published on the 12th of March and tabled here as a key policy reference. Update Annexure A of the March 2025 Budget Review. Update Statistical Annexure to the March 2025 Budget Review. The 2025 Budget Overview and the 2025 Budget Speech. The documents tabled here today are additional to the bills previously tabled, namely the 2025 ESCOM Debt Relief Amendment Bill, the 2025 Public Sector Pension and Related Payments Bill, the 2025 Revenue Laws Amendment Bill, the 2025 Rates and Monetary Amounts and Amendment Revenue Laws Bill. Madam Speaker, before I can proceed, I must say even Dr. Kairam Hopper has accepted that the victory of Kaizer Chiefs is of national importance.
Order, honorable members, don't divide the House. The game was a very good game. Let's not talk about the scores. Let's proceed with the budget.
Madam Speaker, a national budget is not merely an accounting exercise measuring what we earn and what we spend and what we borrow as a nation. It is a reflection of the difficult trade-offs needed to balance fiscal sustainability while simultaneously addressing the developmental goals. It is unsurprising then that the increase to value-added tax proposed on March 12 created so much debate. A vital debate, no doubt, but one that also created some uncertainty. There's clarity now that will remain at 15%. The decision reflects our commitment to listen to South Africans and to all the political parties represented in this House. Today's budget has taken these views into account. This is what the past 2 months have provided, valuable lessons that will inform how we manage the budget process moving forward. The reality, however, is that the decision to do away with the VAT increase without a viable alternative source of revenue significantly reduce our ability to fund additional government programs and projects to the extent we had deemed necessary. Nevertheless, this budget supports sustainable finances, the social wage, investment in economic growth. This is not an austerity budget. It's an expansionary budget. It increases non-interest expenditure by an average of 5.4% over 3 years. In real terms, this is 0.8% growth. It is also a redistributed budget. It directs 61% of every rand of consolidated non-interest expenditure towards the social wage. This is money that will be spent to fund free basic services like electricity, water, education, healthcare, affordable houses, as well as social grants for those in need. This budget invests over 1 trillion in critical infrastructure to lift economic growth prospects and improve access to services. Madam Speaker, this is done without compromising the fiscal strategy of sustainable public finances. We have achieved this difficult balance by reducing additional spending over the medium term by 68 billion rand. Let me repeat because there's confusion. We are saying by reducing additional spending is not cutting budget. There's a difference between the two. There's a difference between the two. What we've been fighting over these 3 months has been by how much we should increase budget, not by how much we should be cutting the budget. So what is being reduced is additional spending. These reductions are primarily aimed at provisional allocation, not yet assigned to votes. Simply put, this means baseline allocations across all spheres of government remain largely unchanged. Instead, the size of the proposed increase to allocation is reduced in line with what we can afford. Our focus going forward is threefold. Our focus, as I've indicated, is threefold: balancing the budget through spending efficiencies, strengthening revenue allocation, and giving expression to the medium-term development plan. This undertaking is not insurmountable if we work together, stay focused, and preserve persevere to chart a better course for our economy and our people. Turning to the economic outlook, Madam Speaker, much has changed since our last appearance in this House. The most problem will be used to improve modernization. This will include targeting illicit trade in tobacco and other areas, which should boost revenue over the medium term. As SARS utilizes this investment to raise additional revenue, which I believe can be at least 35 billion, the 20 billion to close this current revenue gap will not have to be raised through taxes. Madam Speaker, let me call on every South African, be they individuals, small business operators, large corporations, to honor their tax obligations and contribute to the building of a better and more equitable nation. To all taxpayers that continue to pay their taxes, thank you. We do not take this for granted. As a government, we know that we must earn the taxpayers' trust every day by spending public money with care and ensuring that every rand collected is spent on its intended purpose. We recognize the urgent need to do more to achieve this goal. We are not deaf to the public's concern about wasteful and inefficient expenditure. Our commitment to collect taxes must be matched by better efficiencies in how that money is spent. It must be matched by much stricter oversight that quickly identifies problems and provides timely solutions when things go wrong. Honourable Speaker, members of Parliament and fellow South Africans, before I continue, allow me a moment to share with you an open letter from a young medical student, Sarah Stein from the University of Cape Town. I've read and reread this letter since it was published on the 7th of May. The extract of the letter I want to share may be disturbing to some, but perhaps familiar to many of you, too many. The situation this young doctor describes of the state of public hospitals and the emotional toll of working day after day without the basic resources necessary to help people in need in the heartbreaking reality that this budget hopes to address. It is the reality that all of our efforts as political parties and as government must concern with, above all else. Part of this letter reads, and I quote, "Working in a public hospital with a way too few resources punches you in the gut every day. It is not just the trauma of seeing your patients die. It is having no gloves in a delivery room, no alcohol swabs to clean wounds, and knowing that nurses stop at the shop on the way to work to buy their own gloves and masks because the clinic has run out of it. Where waiting time for a scan are months long and surgery delays needlessly let disease progress to the point of being inoperable. It is the limited beds in high care that mean doctors are regularly forced to decide whose life is worth saving more because there's only one space for one." Close quote. Madam Speaker, it is for this reason that the budget maintains the expenditure trajectory presented in the March 12th budget. Addressing these persistent spending pressures to restore critical frontline services and invest in infrastructure is critical for improving access to basic services and lifting economic prospects. As a result, total allocated spending, excluding interest, will amount to 6.69 trillion over the medium term. There is also proposed additional spending of 180 billion rand over the medium term. This is lower than the 232 billion proposed during the March 12th budget. Let me repeat this point. What that sentence means is that on the 12th of March, we proposed to increase the budget by 232 billion. In the current budget, we're still increasing, but with a lesser amount, 180 billion rand. A breakdown of the sector allocation is as follows. The provisional education sector baseline over the 2025 MTF is 104 trillion, and 9.5 billion will be added over the medium term to keep the teachers in the classroom and hire more staff. And an additional 10 billion has been added to the baseline as announced during the March 12th budget to expand access to early education childhood, and is kept unchanged. This will increase early childhood development subsidy from 17 rand per child to 20 per day to 24 rand. The extra funding will also support increased access to early childhood development for 700,000 more children up to the age of 5 years. The provincial health budget is 845 billion over the medium term. This budget will be increased by 20.8 billion over the 3 years to employ 800 post-community service doctors and essential goods and services, and the reduction of accruals. This increase will also assist the sector in addressing personal budget pressures. For April 2025, the old age grant increases remains as well announced by 130 rand, split into 220 and 10. Where, as the original stated, the SRD grant, the COVID SRD grant, Day of Distress, will be extended by up to March 2026. We need to explain this. Does it mean it's not going to be extended beyond March 2026? The answer is no. The answer is no. Government is actively exploring various options to better integrate this grant with employment opportunities. This includes considering a job seekers allowance and other measures as part of the review of the active labor market program. Our goal is not only to provide immediate relief, it is also to create pathways to employment, empowering our citizens to build better futures for themselves and their families. We're also reconfiguring funding for the troop deployment to the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is in the light of the announcement of the South African phase withdrawal from the East African country. In this regard, the 5 billion we had proposed to allocate to the Department of Defense for its participation in the SADC mission in the DRC is reduced. But the allocation of 2025, that has been increased from 180 billion rand to 3 billion. Let me just explain this a bit. Originally, we had 3 phases of increase for the Defense Force. In this financial year, it was going to be 1.8, and then up to the next financial 5 billion. What we have done, because now the Defense Force is coming back, the cost of bringing them back is higher in this financial year. What then are the implications is that we've moved an amount to this year, which makes the amount for this year becomes 3 billion to cater for the relocation cost. This will cover the immediate cost of the orderly and safe withdrawal of our troops and mission equipment. Madam Speaker, 1.4 billion is allocated to support the preparation for the upcoming local government elections. 885 million of the allocation is for the Independent Electoral Commission. 550 million for the South African Police Service and the South African National Defence for the maintenance of public order. This investment contributes to upholding the democratic processes and ensuring that every South African can exercise the right to vote in a safe and secure environment. This budget also retains the provisional allocation to early retirement, allocation for PRASA and the municipal trading entities reforms announced before, but at a slightly lower level than anticipated in the March 12th budget. Madam Speaker, the spending choices we're proposing today demonstrate the government's determination to bolster the state capability needed to deliver quality, reliable, and sustainable cost services. This is what Pillar 3 of the economic growth is about. Despite the additional allocations we've made here, there are other long-standing spending pressures that persist but cannot be funded within the current envelope. This is the nature of the policy trade-offs, prioritizing what we can do now and what we must postpone and spend on later when our resources allow. The spending pressures that may require funding later this year include, among others, the withdrawal of the Presidential Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief called PEFRA funding, particularly which was through the USAID. We've not made provision for the allocation for that now. The Department of Health has just given us the numbers a couple of days ago. Once the resources allow, we'll deal with this matter. The budget facility for infrastructure, the Passenger Rail Agency Service, PRASA, as rolling stock, accommodating population changes that impact on the provincial equitable share allocations. We have done a change in the equitable share which impact negatively on certain provinces, and we've agreed we must cushion the impact on those 3 provinces. Strengthening the capabilities of the Office of the Chief Justice and Statistics South Africa. Political party funding is not catered for here. Additional, I'm not saying which is coming through Parliament as is entire, but additional political funding is not catered here, and provisional infrastructure for royal households. Also, what is not provided here at the cost of the national social dialogue. Madam Speaker, the government will consider government guarantee support for Transnet to enable the entity to refinance maturing debt and to enable the execution of its capital investment program. Honourable members, when an economy underperforms, as ours has over the last decade, it generates less tax revenue while requiring increased social spending, widening budget deficit, and accelerating debt accumulation. To be successful, our strategy of maintaining fiscal discipline while investing in growth demands that we prioritize high-impact expenditure. These are expenditures that deliver economic returns while eliminating inefficiencies, wastes, and leakages that too often plague the government spending. To tackle this, the National Treasury has undertaken expenditure reviews looking at more than 300 billion in government spending since 2013, with the aim of identifying duplication, waste, and inefficiencies. We found potential savings of about 37.5 billion over the time through improved oversight and political changes through these reviews, operational changes. Going forward, underperforming programs will be closed as the 2026 MTF budget process undergoes redesign. New reforms will target infrastructure planning and implementation across provinces and municipalities. A data-driven approach to detecting payroll irregularities will also replace the most costly method of using census. This initiative will cross-reference administrative data sets to identify ghost workers and other anomalies across government departments. Part of the goal of these initiatives is also to remove the regulatory burden on business. Madam Speaker, to be successful, not just technical solutions are required. Sustained political backing at the high level is needed to overcome departmental resistance and to protect whistleblowers who expose irregularities and wastage. I'm happy to say that this political backing has already come from the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, Deputy President Paul Mashatile, as well as my cabinet colleagues. Just to stop, I was impressed with the discussion in cabinet on the 14th of this month. With no exceptions, all my cabinet colleagues backed the measures that I'm talking about today. Thank you, colleagues, for that. The President has also undertaken to establish a committee between the President and Treasury to identify wasteful, inefficient, and underperforming programs. I call upon all ministers, MSCs, DGs, HODs, and every official responsible for public funds to embrace these efforts and play their part. Madam Speaker, the Division of National Raised Revenue will see 2.4 trillion of total non-interest spending allocated to provinces over the medium term. Municipalities will receive 552.7 billion over the same period. Of course, if I may just pause, there's always a disagreement between the different spheres as to who gets a better share of this. That's a battle. SALGA has undertaken a study which says 40% must go to municipalities. I said that's a battle between the different spheres. All I have is the envelope. As long as you can find each other within that envelope, I don't have a problem. So the split addresses the fiscal realities faced by provinces and local governments. The allocations will fund increases in the cost of bulk water and electricity cost provided for the free to needy households, for free to needy households. In 25-26, 83% of the local government equitable share provides for a free basic service package of 610 per month to 11.2 poor households. Honourable members, this package of free municipal services continue to be a key tool for reducing poverty and inequality, raising living standards, and facilitating access to greater economic opportunities. The reality is that sustainable local government finances does not depend merely on enforcement mechanisms, but on delivering genuine value to communities. Declining revenue collection rates are often a function of the quality of the services. Municipalities must recognize that quality service delivery is not just a constitutional obligation, but also a cornerstone of their financial viability. Tackling corruption remains a major priority of all arms of government. We're making progress in pushing back against action that is compromising our national interests. In addressing the scourge of corruption, the National Prosecuting Authority, through its Asset Forfeiture Unit, adopted a broader and aggressive anti-corruption strategy that has yielded financial injection to the fiscus. In the past 5 years, the Asset Forfeiture Unit has recovered over 5 billion paid into the victims of crime and criminal asset account, which is called CARA account. With regard to state capture-related cases, the Asset Forfeiture Unit obtained freezing orders amounting to 14.2 billion, with 8 billion recovered and paid into the CARA account. We make these issues, colleagues, we've decided to point this information out because it's not out there to the public. There's a tendency that says nothing is being done. And I think we need to put this information into the public domain. Madam Speaker, Quality infrastructure investment expands the productive capacity of the economy and responds to the diverse needs of the citizen. Infrastructure is also a rich source of jobs in construction, engineering, and related industries across a range of skill levels. It is for this reason that infrastructure is the fourth pillar of the growth strategy. And this budget demonstrates our resolve to change the composition of spending from consumption to investment. Allocation towards capital payments remain the fastest growing area of spending by economic classification. Public infrastructure spending over 3 years will exceed 1 trillion mark. The key question all of us should be thinking about: if we're to spend this amount efficiently and effectively, the impact on the economy will be massive. What we should be grappling about when you leave this room, all of us, grapple about when you leave this room, is not whether the economy is not growing, growth and so on. It's the question, how do you make sure that this money is spent effectively and efficiently? That's the debate. This spending will focus on maintaining and repairing existing infrastructure, building new infrastructure, and acquiring equipment and machinery. It will also focus on 3 sectors: transport and logistics, energy, and water and sanitation. Of the 402 billion rand for transport and logistics, 93 billion is for the South African National Roads Agency to keep our 24,000-kilometer national road network in active maintenance and rehabilitation. 53 billion rand is for the maintenance and refurbishment of the provincial roads. These investments will remain our extensive road network, will maintain our extensive road network in good condition, allowing for easy access and movement of freight and people within the country and beyond. 66.3 billion is allocated to PASA, out of which 18.2 billion is for the rolling stock fleet and renewal program, and 12.3 billion is provisionally allocated for renewal of signaling system. I like the signaling system, if I may pause. I like that. I can see Honorable Hlego said, because what we're talking about is the speed with which trains in our communities and townships will change. Instead of waiting for 30 minutes or so for a train, we'll have a train probably in every 15 minutes. You know, the EFF colleagues remind me of the time when cell phones were introduced. I was still in COSATU, so Jayendra Knight would come to us. He was in the negotiations, would come to us and tell us about what the cell phone is going to do. If you are in the field, you're going to take this thing from your banklet in rural areas. I said, hey, how can this be possible? This is going to happen is not a tale. The spending will sustain progress in rebuilding the infrastructure to provide affordable commuter rail services. This will enable PRASA increase passenger trips from 60 million in 24-25 to 186 million to the end of the MTF period. Access to safe, reliable, and affordable commuter service is critical for low-income earners who spend more than 50% of their income on transport. You know, before I go to the energy sector, I made an example last time on the 12th, except that you didn't accept what I was trying to say, but let me repeat it. I made a comparison last time and said, The World Bank has published something which compares the worker from South Africa, same amount of money, and said a South African worker will end with a disposable income less. And it says why? Because the cost of transport for the South African worker is higher than the Indonesian worker. That's the difference. So it's quite important that if you are of concern about poor people, these things should be of interest to you. The energy sector will invest 219 billion rand. I couldn't count their numbers until Minister Ramaphosa came. He's more expensive than I've had other ministers previous.
Order, honorable members. Let's allow ministers to continue.
I'm old enough for him, so it's not a problem. So the 219 billion on strengthening the electricity supply network from generation to transmission and distribution. This includes investment in renewable energy projects which continue to contribute to stabilizing the power supply, resulting in reduced load shedding. Efforts to connect more renewable energy projects to the grid and expanding the transmission network through a multi-line transmission package remain on track. The water sanitation sector will spend 56.3 billion on expanding our water resources and service infrastructure, including dams, bulk infrastructure, service mines, factories, and farms. Honourable members, maintenance is important to prolong the life of our infrastructure assets, in addition to ensuring that infrastructure services are reliable and not unnecessarily interrupted. This is the reason our budget emphasizes the aspect of, in addition to building new infrastructure, to further support infrastructure delivery and improve spending efficiencies, the National Treasury continue to implement reforms that will facilitate greater private sector participation in the public infrastructure. The new regulations from public-private partnership were gazetted earlier this year and will take effect next month. These will reduce the procedural complexity of undertaking PPPs, increasing the deal flow and allowing government to leverage its limited resources to fast-track infrastructure provision. The National Treasury has developed enabling guidelines and framework to support the new guide regulation. Specifically, the unsolicited proposals framework will create clear rules for managing proposals from the private sector, and the framework for fiscal commitments and contingent liabilities will strengthen fiscal risk governance. These regulations and frameworks will be published in the next few weeks. The recently established private sector participation unit of the Department of Transport and Transnet are making progress in engaging the market on PSP's project. The PSPs will resolve and improve some of the critical logistic bottlenecks. Win the elections first. In March, a request for information was issued for the ore, chrome, coal, and manganese lines. In April, a request for qualification was issued for the establishment of an independent rolling stock leasing company. Madam Speaker, the budget facility for infrastructure has been effective in supporting quality investment. It does so by reviewing proposals for feasibility, viability, and cost effectiveness. To date, 52.9 billion in additional funding has been unlocked through this process. To scale up this success, the BFI has been reconfigured to accept proposals quarterly rather than annually. In this regard, I'm pleased to confirm that processes of issuing our first infrastructure bonds in 2025-26 remains intact. We are exploring alternative financing instruments to allow pension funds, commercial banks, development banks, and international financial institutions to participate in financing our infrastructure plans. These reforms, Madam Speaker, are how to plan to leverage infrastructure investment to ease supply-side constraints to the economy and improve access to social service the people get. Honorable members, today is about delivering on the hope for a better life, a better future. It is an attempt to meet our shared goals of redistribution, redress, and structural transformation. This budget supports economic activity while raising future economic prospects, directs spending towards the social wage, and invests in state capability and critical infrastructure. All the while promoting fiscal sustainability so future generations are not burdened by the decisions we make today. We are not there yet, but I believe there is consensus in this House that around the country that this is the destination we need to strive for. The recent events have shown us that political debate is part of any vibrant democracy, and that this is not about differences on these goals, but about how they can be achieved. The debate and negotiations have deepened our understanding of policy trade-offs and institutional processes while giving citizens unprecedented visibility into our democracy's evolutions. Negotiation, debate, and compromise, as we have seen unfold over the last weeks, has been a necessary, if sometimes painful, investment in the productivity of future government reform in the new political environment. We have all gained a better, deeper appreciation of each other's policy positions and which trade-offs each of us is willing to contemplate. As parliamentarians, we have been forced to gain closer knowledge of the various institutional processes that govern the budget cycle and its passing into law. The public has had a front row seat to the growing pains of vibrant and committed democracy. This is a good thing. Our journey towards national prosperity belongs to every South African. Speaker, as I close, allow me to express my gratitude to the President, Deputy President, who are not with us today, and I forgot in my salutation to greet the acting president, who was unfortunately some weeks ago, was also an acting president, but unfortunate for 3 hours. He was already telling us in those 3 hours, uba kungoko kuphethe mna ngoku. He was in my office this morning. He was suspicious. He was promising to do some reshuffle. So congratulations, Kwat. President and Deputy President, I have to thank them for their support. Our country with them is in safe hands. My appreciation also goes to my 2 deputy finance ministers and the National Treasury team led by the Director General, Dr. Peterson. They have all helped to shape tremendous workload. As they say, many hands make a light work.
Order.
Before that, thank you to the Commissioner of the South African Revenue Services, the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, and also thanks you to the Financial and Fiscal Commission for their support. Thank you. And my cabinet colleagues. And inkosikazi yasemachaweni, unkosikazi wam, ichoke iguqele kachalbonke kwekwengu.
Thank you, Minister. Order, honorable members. The papers tabled by the Minister will be referred. Order. Order, honorable members. The papers tabled by the Minister will be referred to the relevant committees. I request members to stand and wait for the presiding officer and the maids to leave the chamber. Order. Order, honorable members. The House has not been adjourned. Order. Can we now allow the presiding officer and the maids to leave the chamber? And that concludes the business of the day.